And that is a wrap from the Delaware Blue Hens coming to town to face the Colorado Buffaloes. Colorado victorious 31-7 in this game. What an incredible showing from the Buffaloes. What a bounce back win and a needed win really for this team. One of the things that we saw take a huge step forward from last week was the discipline of this team, offensively and defensively. Where did you guys see that take place the most, and how was it impactful?
Well, just in the penalties, less flags than last week. Really, and I think that's something that just happens as the season goes on, of course. Like, the stakes a little less lower than they were last week. So, that's just the thing. Teams are able to settle in. Players get a feel again for the game, every aspect, the timing, all of it.
On top of that, Coach Prime in his post-game presser, he said, last year it's no question we were the most penalized team in the Big 12, but our discipline this year is like astronomically better. You touched on this, Colby, a second ago. Delaware is a lower level team, and we came out here and dominated today. But overall, when you're not facing a serious threat, it is a little easier to just focus on your craft. You're not going to be pulling penalties that are really unnecessary. So this is a real opportunity here to prove themselves as a disciplined team, especially with this new squad that we've had this year.
And defensively specifically, too, you saw the discipline much improved from last week. You saw the players playing with anticipation. You saw the players playing tightly. It was just a big, big, big improvement.
Yeah, and on the defense, of course, the adjustments that were made to defending against the run. We saw linebackers continuing to flock to the ball, and the defensive line keeping contained on the quarterback and flying to the running backs anytime that they got any ounce of space to work with, and it was a much, much improved performance on that side, discipline being a huge part of that. There was one little kind of hiccup where there was the 3 straight penalties for the offensive line. That is something that stood out from the rest of this game. Wasn't really like that. Kind of looked back to the discipline we saw last week and the struggles they had with it. Do you think that's something to be concerned about in the future? Is that something that could snowball, or was it just kind of a one-time thing that we're over now?
Well, I think it's definitely just more of a one-time thing, because if you have penalties like that spread out throughout the game, but they all happen condensed, right? And so it's just kind of something weird that happens, like a flow that they were in that was just going the wrong direction, you know what I mean? Something they just had to kind of snap out of.
And an important thing to note with those 3 condensed penalties is they all came in the first series in which Caden Salter returned to the field following Staub's run. And not that it's necessarily on Salter, of course, but that change in game plan, that change in pace might have led to the lack of not necessarily familiarity, but the lack of rhythm that led to those penalties.
Yeah, Pat Shermer said this in the presser too. Staub is just like one of them. He treats him like he's his son, especially since he's been there since Shador and Coach Prime and company came to town here in Boulder. And so, he's really cradled him, and I think that really had an impact on his discipline as well. He's had time to develop. He knows the coaching staff better than Salto or Juju, who have not even been here a year yet. And so, that's I think a huge factor in really enhancing this team's discipline coming into this game.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned that the change of quarterbacks threw this offense off a little bit. I think that shows why it is so key to pick a consistent starter, and why you don't see teams work out long term if they're rotating through a bunch of different quarterbacks just based off who's playing well that day. It often sets you behind in games, and so if they are wanting to keep that good discipline with the offensive line and just the offense as a whole and keep that consistent, they're going to want to find a guy, and I think that they may have today in Ryan Staub, not even a guy that we expected to touch the field today, and he went out and had an incredible game. What did you guys think about his performance today and him moving forward?
Yeah, well, it was a great showing today. It was, and this is something I've always been wondering. He's been in the system for this is 3rd year, and last spring, during the spring game, he didn't look bad, not at all. And so it's always something that I've wondered, hey, will we ever see Staub? And I'm really glad we did because of what happened at the game. He was accurate. He was reading the defense. He was even maneuvering the pocket, extending plays. Every little part that you want a QB to have, he had a lot of those. He looked composed. He looked experienced.
I mean, hindsight is 2020, but leading up in the offseason, all offseason, Shermer and Sanders both had highlighted Schaub as a contender in, stop, mind you, a contender in that quarterback race. So it's not necessarily that we should have seen this coming, but for him to come out today, be given the opportunity he was, and to show off the way he did, especially with his familiarity with the coaching staff and with the playbook, it's not super surprising necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Prime, he said in his leading up to this game, especially, I mean, he wanted each of his QBs to get at least 2 series, and someone's going to come out of the pack, and clearly that was Ryan Staub today. He got 4 because of his consistency. That's what he said. And I mean, this was the most consistency that I had seen from this Colorado team all season, even like going back to last year with Shador. I mean, he had his moments for sure, but I mean, when he really rolls out of the pocket and just is forced back and takes a massive loss in yardage, that's something that I think Ryan Staub observed and he really improved upon coming into this game.
Yeah, this is a coaching staff that loves Ryan Staub. Ryan Staub is a guy who is stuck with this team, even though they brought in, they bring in Julian Lewis as a 5-star. They bring in Caden Salter, an experienced starter from the portal. And, it's sort of like that's the typical situation nowadays that you see quarterbacks hit the portal in. That's usually when you see a guy up and leave. But he stuck around, and I think the coaching staff loves that about him. And he said in the presser today he doesn't know why he stayed, but it felt right. He loves playing here. He wanted to stick his head in the ground and work, and that paid off today. And so in a day and age where everything is so focused on the transfer portal and getting your opportunity right now, how crucial do you think it was to his team believing in him and him getting this opportunity that he has stuck around and he is he's a Buff lifer?
Well, sometimes if you just like a college, you like a college. He said himself he just likes being in the buildings here. So it just really can just be things like that. He likes Prime. He likes everything. They're all good to him. And, his patience was rewarded today.
I don't want to sound like a terrible person here, but I mean, I really think Ryan Staub is one of those quarterbacks who's just like, he knows what he wants and he really holds that value deep. He's not like in the age of NIL that's just driving the NCAA into this new era. I mean, you said it, Liam. Everybody wants to get their start now. But I mean, patience and I had a family friend when I was younger tell me, I mean, patience is the key to success. And I mean, he just stuck around, and I mean, he got his moment today. So I'm really proud of him for sticking around. And honestly, who wouldn't want to leave Boulder? Prime's not leaving Boulder, right? I mean, it's a special place, and you've just got to have the right heart. You got to have the right mentality to really succeed here, especially in this league. Coming here to Boulder.
Yeah, it just speaks to the culture that Sanders has built here. That Staub talked about it. It's about building a level of trust with the coaching staff that even though he wasn't getting his opportunity early on, it was going to come to him eventually with hard work. That's what both the coaches and Staub emphasized in the post-game pressers. Is that the culture just emphasizes hard work and grit and fighting for your opportunity, and I think today was a perfect example of the results that can come from that.
And as far as how Coach Prime is going to handle this going forward and who will start next week, in his presser he was asked who is going to be the number 1 guy. He said, I know how I'm going to handle the quarterback situation, but I'm not going to say it. Now that makes sense. You're obviously going into another week against a tough team in Houston. You don't want to give them any clues as to who you could be running out there. The more options that they have to prepare for, the better. But he also said that, going into this game, he had a direct plan for how much he wanted each of these guys to play, and he did not deviate from that. He said he wanted it to tell its own story, and I think it told that today. So let's look at the other 2 guys who were a part of that story, starting off with Caden Salter. What did you see from him today, and what did you think about his performance?
Well, to be honest, Salter didn't look that different from how he looked last week. He kind of same situations he got himself into, handled them kind of the same way. The way he moved around the pocket, some of the throws he made, some of the missed throws he made. He really just kind of looked like the same QB that we saw a week ago to me. I didn't see any growth even against this little bit of a weaker opponent.
Yeah, the concern or the hope, I should say, after the first week's game was that was his bad nerves game. He got it out of the way. He was more comfortable now. But in this game, it looked like more of the same, like Colby was saying, especially in the second half when he came back following Staub's series. He had a near fumble that looked really, really ugly, and so you hate to see it for him, but it just looked like he's not quite settled in yet to the pace of the offense and the flow of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. This was, I think, coming out of Liberty, the season that he had in 2023, 2024, it was a reasonable season as well. But coming in here, playing in the Power Four, I think these last couple of games have showed that he's not really ready for that challenge yet. And I mean, he's playing in a stadium of 50,000 people compared to Liberty's, and it's tough, man.
And on that note, too, it's not necessarily an equivalent, of course, but Delaware is a Conference USA team now. This is roughly the level of competition that Salter faced back when he was with Liberty. And even though he was performing at quite a solid level at Liberty, it's odd to see him not adjusting to a team of that quality, or at least perceived to be of that quality in that conference.
And you think of his best season at Liberty, 2023, over 1,000-yard rusher, one of the best quarterbacks in the nation that year, led them to a New Year's Six Bowl, and, it came on the back of, like I said, his legs. He was a 1,000-yard rusher that year, and I think that's the reason they brought him in here. They brought him in here because they know he's a dual-threat quarterback, and they wanted to add that threat to their offense, especially around these new running backs. They bring him in, and so far he seems sort of hesitant and stagnant to use his legs. He'll get into a situation where he's rolling outside the pocket, and instead he'll try to make an athletic throw downfield, and that's not the type of quarterback he is. They expect him to step up in that situation and run downfield, pick up those extra yards, and use his biggest weapon being his legs, and they really haven't gotten that out of him. So if you're gonna have a guy who wants to play like a pocket passer anyway, or play like a guy who stands in, makes a throw rather than tries to create on his own, I think they want to turn to a guy like a Ryan Staub or a Julian Lewis, because that's the type of quarterback that they are better at being. That's their play style, and they have a more honed in skill set on that. And looking at Julian specifically, he also, of course, made his debut today. What do you guys think of him and his opening performance?
I mean, I think he should have been given more chances even, because first drive he came in, it ended up stalling, but he went 2 for 3. And one of those throws was really nice on the run. It didn't hit the receiver right on him, but it was a pretty good throw on the run. And then just the second drive, it was 2 runs, and then he got swarmed by a blitz, and there was nothing he could really even do about it. And that's really all we saw from him, and I would have liked to have seen more.
Yeah, absolutely, Colby. I mean, I think I misjudged him during the spring game. I mean, our offensive line wasn't the best at that time, or at least they didn't show it, because our defense is explosive too. We'll get to that in a minute. But I mean, they just penetrated that pocket and were able to sack him right away. But from what the limited plays that we did see from Lewis, I was very impressed. I mean, he closely emulated what Shador did last year. But I mean, he's still young. He's 17. He's not even 18 yet. So I mean, just letting him get little reps like that, and especially against a lower opponent like Delaware. Hopefully, we'll see him play against Wyoming. I would really like to see that, just to get those reps in, and just keep building.
And he even showed off his legs a little bit. He was recruited as more of a pocket passer than a guy like Caden Salter, but he showed he has legs.
Mm-hmm. And you can see, I mean, we talk about how he didn't necessarily get as big of a chance as we would have liked to see, even within the chances that he got. The play calling was relatively pedestrian, I'd say. They didn't necessarily put on the light show the way they did job stuff for Staub. But that being said, I think it's good for him for it to be a baby steps process. He is a young kid. He is coming in to a national stage. He is a 5-star recruit. There's a lot of attention, and easing him in and building that composure. It sounds like when we heard Coach Sanders at the press conference, there is a longer-term vision here. And so even though we didn't get the full picture today in today's game, there has to be a level of faith that they'll just keep building that up and keep building his confidence.
Yeah, and you both mentioned, him being protected today, and that was, I think that he was protected both by the coaching staff in what they said about him and in the situations they put him in, and then also, as you mentioned, the play calling. It was overall a a very heavy focus on let's get him out there, but let's not kill his confidence. Let's not stunt his growth. I think he was impressive in what he showed. They limited what he was able to show for that reason, I think. But I think that overall it was a good baby step, like you said. But shifting gears, let's look at the defense. Major improvement from last week. Still some things you want to patch up, especially with it being Delaware. But I mean, a huge improvement from last week, holding them to 7 points.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the scoreboard, wow, 7 points. You look at the stat sheet and saw that Delaware QB, Menacucci, threw for over 300 yards. You can't really let Delaware throw for over 300 yards. And there were a lot of times where, I mean, they looked like they were really just rolling down the field. Their passing game was in a groove. They looked like they had our secondary on their heels. And then fortunately for the Buffs, when the field got shorter, they were able to really tighten things up, lock in there to prevent any scores. But, man, there were a lot of mistakes in the secondary.
And despite the lack of discipline in the passing defense, the big concern following last week was the run defense and the fact that I had let Hens King and the Georgia Tech running game just absolutely steamroll them. Now this week you can see the big improvement. They only allowed 84 yards of rushing. Minakuchi, who was another dual threat quarterback, almost like a Walgreens Haynes King a little bit going into this game. They kept him totally limited, 7 attempts, 5 yards, despite the fail. Not necessarily failure, but the step back in the secondary. The run defense was absolutely elite today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, John, that was a great point that you brought up. I mean, I don't know what else I could say that tops what y'all have. But I was very impressed with our defense. This closely emulated what we saw in the spring game last April, and I really hope that what happened today, I really hope it continues going into Houston, which is they're up there. We're playing our first Big 12 opponent, so we'll get to that more in a minute. I feel like I'm always jumping ahead of myself here, but I mean, overall, I'm very impressed. They were finally able to capitalize, and I mean, it's not Haynes King, that's for sure. But they were able to read their plays. Robert Livingston did a great job at calling his plays, conferring with his team and his players. I was very impressed overall.
Yeah, I think the defensive line, you mentioned it perfectly. They stepped up and they contained, and that was a huge issue last week. And, the other thing you got to think about with their yardage total is you look at the, Delaware's last 2 drives. It was really, CU had the scrubs in at that point, and it was kind of just prevent sitting back and letting them go. So I think that sort of did inflate it a little bit. But I agree with what you said, though. There was things to work on. Delaware's touchdown drive was nothing short of dominant. That was an impressive touchdown drive that CU's defense should not be giving up, especially in their own stadium with with Delaware's offense trying to charge into their student section. I mean, that's concerning for sure, and especially when you know that you've got guys down the road. Connor Wigman coming up this week with this next week with Houston, and the variety of other incredible Big 12 quarterbacks that are in this conference, and incredible offenses, and the various looks they're going to give. You can't be giving up those types of drives to teams like Delaware, but. Overall, though, I think that it was at the very least something that they can say, we can do this. This is a team that's brought in so many new faces on this defense. They're replacing a lot of very key contributors, and this is their first time together as a unit, basically getting to see what they can operate at their fullest. And now they know that that's what they need to replicate. And even though it might be harder to do so in the future, they at least have that specific goal in mind. But I mentioned Connor Wiegman. Let's look forward to Houston this coming week. What should we expect in this game? What might we need to see from the Buffs for them to pull out the win?
Just tighten up on the secondary, on the pass coverage. Houston, their pass offense is much improved from last year. So they just don't allow 300 passing yards, allow 200 passing yards. And even then, I think it'll be a very good game at the least.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think really Colorado today let their guard down, especially in terms of defense, allowing for there was only 2 yards difference between total yards today, especially on the passing side. But I mean, Colby, you said it. Just tighten up a little bit. Our defense is going to have to maintain that composure, maintain that discipline that they did today. And I mean, not having as any penalties come against or very minimal penalties come against our defense is definitely a start. And I think just keep Ryan Staub in my eyes is like going to be the future of the Buffs this season. I'm really happy to see that he came out today and brought such incredible intensity to this field. So just he's got to keep working for sure to build his game up, and overall just pull out another win against Houston. It's going to be more difficult going into the Big 12, but I think we can do it.
One final thing that needs to be emphasized going into this Houston game is even though the offensive line is much improved this season, of course, and we saw today they were doing a great job allowing the run game to really blossom, protecting the quarterback is going to be big. Sneaky stat today, Delaware had 5 sacks. And you might have missed that, but the offensive line, there was just a little bit of a lapse there. They didn't protect the quarterback as well as they could have. And if Ryan Staub's your guy going into Houston, you want to make sure that he's a long-term investment. You want to keep him protected.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that a lot of those we saw with Caden Salter, which was interesting because it was like, a guy who's moving around the pocket a little bit more. They weren't able to adjust as well and keep him protected. And Staub, that's not as much of a concern, but we did see him run a little bit today. And so if you want to have this guy have the opportunity to get out of the pocket and create, if a pass breaks, if you're covered in the pass, you're not able to complete the pass you want, you're not able to get the looks you want, that's always a good thing to have regardless of the type of, natural talent that the guy has at that sort of aspect of the game. So I think I agree with you there. Definitely going to need to improve the offensive line and if they are to rotate quarterbacks especially. But then also, the defensive backs. Yeah, like you said, we saw the interception from R.J. Johnson. That was really encouraging. And there were some plays. I especially liked Stoutmeyer. He had an incredible game, and I thought he was locking down his receivers, especially in man coverage, which is great to see from a safety. And they're gonna need more play like that, and they're all gonna need to play like that at the same time, not just at separate points in the game where they come forward and make a big play, but then someone else has to make a big play to make up for them kind of slacking behind later. They're all gonna need to perform at that high of a level consistently and together, because Connor Weigman's a good quarterback. Houston has a good passing attack. They're gonna need to put a lid on that, and they did prevent deep shots for Delaware today, but some of that intermediate passing and over the middle as well. Got to see some better coverage from the linebackers, but that I think that is something that is an adjustment they can make. Houston is really just going to be the first test of that. So moving on, that game is going to be coming up, and then shortly after that we got one game against Wyoming. We head into conference play afterwards. Lot to be excited about this season. I think that this game displayed that very well. Of course, Ryan Staub looking incredible, and you really just, this quarterback room is a wild card, and there's so much talent on offense, and the defense is rotating different guys through. Special teams looked great. I think this game gives a lot to build on and a lot to be excited about going forward. So with that said, thank you for joining us all here on the post-game show. It was an incredible game today. It was good to see the Buffs get out there and show what they can do, and now we will be on to Houston next week. You heard it here.